Hello, friends. It's time for another Boot Room. Looking ahead to Town's match this weekend. I am Mark Heath. I'm joined this week by Stuart Watson. MK Dons are visitors this weekend, Stewie, to Portman Road. And so much of sport is about narrative. It's about storylines. And there's so much narrative going into this game. You can float a boat on it. So where do you want to start with the talking points for this game? Which one are you going to pick out? Where shall we begin?
Well, let's start with the MK Dons dugout and a plethora of former Ipswich players / coaches now in charge of the Dons, who lost Russell Martin to Swansea right on the eve of the season. And then from real left field, Liam Manning, the former Ipswich Town player, released as a youngster, did a bit of coaching in the academy setup, and then he's gone on this magical mystery tour that's taken him to do jobs in New York, in Belgium, and it's been enough to get him the job at MK Dons. And he has now appointed Chris Hogg as his assistant manager, the former Ipswich under-23s boss, who's been up at Newcastle, and David Wright, the former Ipswich defender, who has been plucked from Norwich City's under-23s. So quite the cast of former Ipswich players that will be trying to plot Paul Cook and Ipswich Town's downfall tomorrow at Portman Road.
Yeah, and it doesn't just stop there, does it? The coaching staff, there's players as well. Obviously, Scott Fraser welcoming his old chums to Portman Road, and on the other side, there's a striker who we know well at Ipswich Town.
Yeah, Troy Parrott, who Ipswich obviously had on loan back end of last season. Didn't really happen for him at Ipswich. He's gone out on loan again from Tottenham. Will be spending the season at MK Dons. He comes into this game having scored 2 in 2 against Sunderland and Charlton, so good opposition for him. And as you say, Scott Fraser, who scored off the top of my head, I can't remember, 14 goals and 6 assists, thank you, for MK Dons last season, a lot of them penalties, and he's crossed over to Ipswich. So a lot of talk about where he might play within the Ipswich team position-wise, having played sort of wide thus far. Is this the game where he gets played in his preferred number 10 slot against his former club?
We'll come on to the starting lineups in a minute, Stu, but obviously the other narrative going into this game is Town simply need to win. They've not started very well at all. By any mark, it's been a disappointing start, yet to win in the league. So the pressure will continue to mount with every game. When it's not suggesting there is any pressure on Paul Cook as yet, but certainly they do need a win just to kind of calm things down and get the ball rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly how I see it. They've had the performances, just not had the points to back them up. I think if you looked at all of those games, Morecambe, Newport in the Cup, Burton and Cheltenham, they've had dominant spells for large parts in that game, moments where you thought they were going to kick on and win. And the key moments are going against them, namely Scott Fraser not scoring his penalty against Burton, and then Macaulay Bond's extraordinary miss in midweek. So if they can just start turning one of those big moments in games their way, the hope is that this team clicks, it gels, things get better, they build some momentum. But obviously the longer that wait for a win goes on, it might just erode at the players' confidence a little. It might just put a little bit of nerves amongst these long-suffering fans. So quicker they get that win on the board, the better for sure.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Shall we look at the potential lineup then? You'll have a pop at the starting 11. One of the big questions, of course, as you've already touched on there, Stu, is where will Scott Fraser play? We know he's going to be desperate to do well against his old club. He came over to Portman Road with a reputation as being among, if not the best, number 10s in League One, and he's yet to play there for Ipswich Town. So is tomorrow going to be the day we see him pulling the strings there finally?
We spoke to Paul Cook about this in the pre-match press conference. The reply was a little bit cryptic. It probably led to more questions than answers, to be honest. I think what Paul was trying to say is that because of the injuries that he's got across the squad at the moment, it's been needs must. And he sort of indicated that he's not been able to play players in the positions, in the slots that they were recruited for. You would imagine that Fraser is the key candidate for that. Although he did say that without certain players, he hasn't got a number 10 at the moment. I think he might have just been meaning that he's a bit short of wingers, so Fraser's had to play there. But there are options for him. If he really wants to play Scott Fraser as a number 10, there are options still. Even with Wes Burns, Sonny Aluko, Connor Chaplin out, there is still the option of Barry and Dobra to play wide if need be. So I'll give you a starting lineup if you want. It's my stab at it. It's don't read too much into this. It'll be Hladky in goal, I imagine, again. I I think there'll be a couple of changes in the fullback positions. This game is going to be all about MK Dons trying to dominate possession, particularly in the middle of the park. That's their game. They play with wing backs, and I think Ipswich, their big hope in this game is to win it down the flanks with some overloads and those marauding fullbacks. So perhaps some fresh legs after Tuesday night, and perhaps a debut for Hayden Coulson, who we're excited about his attacking qualities from left back. The Middlesbrough loanee has had a bit of a delayed start to life at Ipswich because of COVID. He was on the bench in midweek. I think he might go straight into the starting 11 despite Matt Penny scoring. Kane Vincent-Young dipped out on Tuesday night, probably just wrapping him in cotton wool a little bit after all the injuries, but him back in for Janoy Donasian, who's obviously a bit more defence-minded. The central defensive duo, you imagine, would stay the same. Cameron Burgess had a really, really solid debut. Was impressed by him at Portman Road on Tuesday night. Luke Wolfenden looked better with his experience alongside him. Obviously, Toto Enciala is still out, and this game's just come a little bit too soon for George Edmondson. Sounds like he's not too far away, but Cook says he's not quite ready for this one. Midfield 2. Evans and Harper to carry on just for me. I thought Evans was a little bit scatty on Tuesday night. He got a booking quite early on, got away with a couple of fouls after that, was walking a bit of a tightrope, but I think he'll go with those two, although Tom Carroll is obviously breathing down their necks, and maybe there'll be a moment in this game where Tom Carroll is brought on to try and help Ipswich keep the ball against an MK Don side that will want to keep the ball themselves. And then we get to the front end of the pitch, which is where we've seen so many different combinations thus far. Kyle Edwards on the left, nailed on. He looked mesmerising on Tuesday night, certainly in that first 45. Ipswich stopped giving him the ball in the second half. Inexplicably, they need to give him the ball. He can be a real match winner for them. Piggott up front, I think they've got to stick with him. He's the man they've recruited to get the goals. I think they'll go with him. And this is where I've changed it a little bit. You asked if is this the game for Fraser as a number 10. I've put him in there. I'm not convinced by this, but we've tried a few combinations that haven't really worked. Maybe this is the game where Fraser finally plays as the 10, which would leave you really a couple of options out on the right between Louis Barry, the Aston Villa loanee, and Armando Dobra, who had a really good sort of pre-season and played well in that cup game against Newport. It's a toss-up between them two, but I'll go with Louis Barry.
Okay, that's what Stu thinks might happen tomorrow. Hopefully we get to see Fraser in that 10 spot. Stu, you look at the MK Dons lineup. Any players there that Town should be worried about? We've already talked about Parrott. They've obviously got Mo Isa up front, and the man who replaced Scott Fraser, Scott Twine, has also started well. He's got a goal and an assist in his first 3 games, and from what I understand, he really pulls the strings there, wins a lot of free kicks and tracks back as well. So certainly a man that Town will be watching closely tomorrow.
Yeah, and we know firsthand that he can score a screamer from long range as well. He's done that a few times already in his fledgling career. So that front 3 of Isa and Parrott with Scott Twine in behind is a very good front 3 for this division. Looking at their team, it's been pretty settled for the first 3 games so far. They got their first win, so they got that monkey off their back with the Charlton game. This is a dangerous game for Ipswich to be walking into off of, given the circumstances that we talked about, really needing to get a win. Last season, I think Flynn Downs has referenced this actually, when he signed for Russell Martin at Swansea, playing against an MK Dons team. Sometimes you go for long periods without getting the ball. And it's how disciplined Ipswich can be with that, whether they can pose a threat on the counter-attack themselves. Paul Cook said that this is going to be a very, very entertaining game. 2 teams going toe-to-toe, a really good advert for League One. So let's hope it lives up to that. And more importantly, Ipswich find a way to come out on top.
Well, you've teed up perfectly there, Stu. So I'm going to take that. Prediction time. On the podcast, I said I was feeling 1-1, and they got all optimistic and went 3-1 in the end. So I've got to stick with that. Ipswich Town to win 3-1, which would be, on the face of it, a fantastic way to kickstart the season with a good win against a good side at Portman Road. Are you feeling as optimistic as me, or are you inclined to be a bit more negative about this one?
Probably somewhere in between. I think this might take a few more games for Ipswich to start bedding in some partnerships and building some momentum. I've gone for a Desmond. I've gone for a 2-2. I think all this talk about it being an entertaining game and both teams going for it. Ipswich don't look like they've got a clean sheet in them at the moment, but I do feel like they're capable of scoring goals. They're certainly more entertaining to watch. So I think if it is that sort of game and it is that sort of scoreline, that hopefully it's one that you feel that they can then go and take into the Wimbledon and the Wickham games that come after that. So 2-2 I've gone for.
There you go. So we both said 4 goals. That almost guarantees it's going to be a 0-0 ball draw tomorrow, Stu, at Portman Road. Let's hope that is not the case, and let's hope that Town do get that victory. Follow it with the guys who'll be at Portman Road tomorrow: Stuart Watson, Mike Bacon, and Ross Halls. All the kind of reaction analysis, everything you could ever want, would be online and in print on Monday in our 12-page verdict pull-out supplement. And we'll speak to you again next time.